Good afternoon. My name is Ann Wright. I'm a member of Veterans for Peace, and it's a pleasure to be here online with Veterans for Peace National Convention, our first online national convention. Today, we're going to be talking about Palestine. The U.S. government has continued to condone Israeli violence toward Palestinians. The Trump administration has moved its embassy to Jerusalem. It has stopped the annual contributions to the UN Works and Relief Agency, UNRWA, that supports the help and education of Palestinian refugees that were forced from their homes. Home demolitions of Palestinian homes in the West Bank continues unabated. Illegal Israeli settlements on Palestinian lands continue, with one settlement to be named for Trump. Trump has given his approval for the Israeli annexation of the Golan Heights. Conditions in Gaza continue to deteriorate with the Israeli blockade of Gaza. The threat of the coronavirus looms great, with few critical care medical facilities available to treat coronavirus patients. The numbers of Palestinians targeted by Israeli snipers in the Great March of Return resulted in hundreds of deaths and over 16,000 wounded. International activists bring global attention to Palestine through their educational programs and their direct actions, such as Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions, and the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, of which I'm a part of. These activists are targeted in their home countries by the US politicians who are paid off by Israeli supporters to pass state and national laws outlawing criticism of the state of Israel. Representatives of Students for Justice in Palestine on college campuses in the US and their professors who speak critically of Israeli government policies toward Palestinians have been targeted with threats of dismissal and actual dismissal from universities. Today on our panel, we have people from Gaza, from the United States, and France who will tell us about pushing back from US and Israeli policies. I'd like to thank the Canadian Vote for Gaza, who is assisting us in doing this presentation today. We'd like to start out first with a video that was done by a remarkable group of men and women, young men and women in Gaza, who are part of what's called We Are Not Numbers, an activist group, a journalist group, who have shed light on the day-to-day lives of Gaza. We're going to show their film about the Great Return March, and following that, a person from Gaza, whom I will introduce after the film, will tell us more about what's happening in Gaza. So Jace, if you could show that video, please.
The heroine of my story is Minna Qdeeh. She is the youngest journalist to cover the Great Return March. What struck me the most about Minna's story is how she overcame her inner conflict. She almost stopped going to the march after one of her idols, the journalist Yasser Murtaja, was killed by Israeli snipers. But then she kept going. Her story will inspire every female in the world to be what they want to be and avoid being scared and hesitant.
It was Yasser's beautiful smile and blue press vest that flashed across international media and made the protest personal for so many. I felt compelled to write his story because I aspire to be the kind of journalist he was. A devoted father and husband, but always on the front lines of a story, working to make it come alive for viewers thousands of miles away. I'm just getting started in my career, but it is his story and example that drive me forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We are joined from Gaza by Asma Tayeb, who is the operations manager for We Are Not Numbers, the organization that produced that film about the Great Return March. After studying English literature at Al-Azhar University, Asma first volunteered and then was hired to be the social media coordinator for We Are Not Numbers, which shares the essays, stories, and poems written by youth members that describe the daily life of people living in Gaza and the deteriorating social and economic situation there. She has written many articles about life in Gaza. One of her latest from July 2020 is One Girl's Joust with Depression, in which she describes the challenges of depression when there is so little to be positive about living in Gaza. Another article is War and Peace, Working as a Citizen Journalist. I'll just mention before we have her come on that our Gaza Freedom Flotilla has commissioned We Are Not Numbers to produce 2 short documentaries about Gaza. One is called 6 Miles Out, about the Gaza fishers who are attacked by the Israeli occupation forces. And the second is Dreams in the Crosshairs, about amputees in Gaza who have been severely wounded from the targeting and shooting by Israeli snipers. We value so much the opportunity to work with the wonderful organization of We Are Not Numbers, and we thank Asma for being a representative here today. Asma, please.
Hi, all. So today I'll be talking about our daily life in Gaza. And to be honest, there's so much that's going on here, but I will try to be specific. So as for the video you watched, it was about the Great March of Return, but to me, it doesn't tell everything. It tells only, let's say, one story from the Great March of Return. And we at We Are Not Numbers are trying our best to document all the stories from the front lines and even behind them. Since 2018, we started to write a book that contains 52 stories from the Great March of Return. They're particularly from the protesters and the people of Gaza who took part in the Great March of Return just because they thought that this is the only way that they can demand their rights and maybe get something back. To me, I didn't take part in those protests because I thought it was really dangerous for me. And at first, the Great March of Return protests started as peaceful protests, and they were meant to be peaceful until the Israeli occupation forces started to shoot some people. And then day by day, the numbers just started to increase and increase. And then we really felt that it's our mission to document all the stories and tell what's behind the images that you are seeing in the news and behind the numbers that you're hearing about. And we did our best also to expose the Israeli crimes and show them and show the whole world that our rights are true and they deserve to be fought for. For me, like I said, I didn't take part because it was dangerous, but at the same time, I really wanted to be there because it felt like it's my responsibility to fight for first my origins, my original my original village, which is Beit Daras. I've always heard the stories about Beit Daras from my grandmother, who is 92 right now, but she still remembers everything about it. She still remembers olives, how they grew things, how they used to eat things, how they traveled to other places around the village to get this and that. And she always longs for those days. Even nowadays, when we make some food for her, she goes like, no, it's never like the food I used to eat in Bedras. All those stories made me want to fight for my original village and the others villages. So I always knew it was our right to just go to the eastern borders and demand our rights. And to me and everyone else, it was our last resort. It was our last solution to stand up and say no more killing, no more blockade, no more everything. We need to live and we deserve to live. But at the same time, I just couldn't risk my life because some people had no hope that they went there and risked their lives, although they knew they could be injured or killed. But for me, I just couldn't do that because I always thought that my role and my life is just more important if I'm alive and stand and while sitting here and writing stories about those who are killed and injured and being victimized and dehumanized. So I prefer to stay here and, as Anne told you, write stories like the one in which I talked about me and my life as a citizen journalist. I always had to work just like journalists and receive the bad news, and that always made me fall a victim for depression and sadness because I always felt like I'm helpless and I have nothing to do but receive news and work with journalists to seize the opportunity that We're Not Numbers has so many followers and just pass the news for them and tell them what's going on here in Gaza. Um, even during Israeli attacks, I always had to put all of our social media strategies aside and just work with journalists to pass the news. And that always made me feel like I have maybe no purpose for life that's better than working as a citizen journalist because my role at that time and always now is not better than or more or less than the role of a freedom fighter. Um, but as I said, it's not really easy for us to live all of that. And it's really hard for us all the time to receive such news and have to deal with them. But we are doing our best to tell the stories behind those numbers. And now, after 2 years, it's always sad for us to watch those videos and read some stories about those who we lost. But at the same time, it gives us some hope that we at least did our best and decided to say no to all of that. And I'm still, to be honest, a bit sad that the Israeli occupation maybe used their media and the strength of their media against us and told false stories about us. But this is also giving us the courage to stand up and tell the truth and expose their crimes. And that's where your role is really important to us. That's why we really appreciate you and your support and everything you're doing for Palestine. And all of that after 2 years is making our life harder, especially when it comes to the coronavirus. The whole world was at first really a mess, and we thought that we're safe here thanks to the blockade, and that was the first time when we started to think of the blockade as something good. And to be honest, for me, in the beginning, I thought that, oh, it started in China. China is too far from us, so we're safe here. And then weeks later, it like everything went crazy and we started to feel the danger. But at the same time, everyone around the world was saying, oh, they have a blockade. Now the blockade is a blessing. And I hated that and liked it at the same time because, like I said, it was the first time that I could see something good in the blockade, although it was the thing that prevented us from everything that causes life or living in a good way. It always affected every aspect of our life was just um, not going right because of the blockade. The way we eat, the way we live, the way we dream, the way we study, the way we do anything in our life is just affected by the blockade. And that was when that was the first time that we felt it's a blessing. But then um, we started to receive some people from some Palestinians who needed to enter the Gaza Strip from Egypt. And then we're glad and we're lucky that our governmental offices tried our and the MOH, the health ministry of Palestine of Gaza in Gaza, they decided to create some quarantine centers in which they received people who were coming from outside Gaza, and they stayed like 3 weeks or more to be examined and to be isolated from the public. And then we encourage just in to be we tried to take some precautions and stayed home for like 40 days. And even during quarantine, most of us stayed home, but at the same time, most of us had to stay out. There are some people who need to be out so they can earn a living. Some people, like, let's take drivers, for example. You know, your countries, you receive a service from the municipality or the government in which you can take any public transportations, and life is just easy for you a bit. But for us, we have to take taxis, and if the drivers stay home, nothing will work. And for them, if they don't go out and work, they can't live because they depend on their daily money to live. So gradually, life started to become more normal, and more people started to go out and feel like we're safe as long as the people who are coming from outside of Gaza are staying in quarantine centers, so we can just go on. And since then, like from the end of April till now, we're just leading a really normal life. It's not really normal, but you know, we're staying out. We can go out, we can do whatever we want, and not care about the coronavirus. But at the same time, I need to tell you that most of our people, or let's say half of the Gaza Strip, they decided to just ignore that they have danger called COVID-19, and they went like, we survived so many wars and Israeli attacks, so we can survive this. We just can go out, and we die, we don't care. We're living a bad life anyway. And that also made me sad because this is, let me say, the result of the dehumanization we've been facing. We have been dehumanized for so many years that we don't know the value of our lives, and we don't appreciate ourselves enough. So we don't care. We live or die. We just don't care. And and let me tell you this: some people actually went to the Great March of Return, although they know it's dangerous, just because they can get injured. Can you believe that? Like, they thought if we get injured, we can get a salary from the government and we can live and make a living for our families. So it's fine if I lose my leg, my hand, it's fine as long as I can have some money from the government. So that's how hard our lives can get. But at the same time, I'm also happy that putting all of that aside, there are some people who are trying to thrive and flourish and show their talents and their strength points, and they're showing power and everything that's making that makes them feel like humans, maybe, to show their value. And that's when our role as journal members come. We join these people to our team of writers so they can write, they can train, we train them to writing skills, and we're helping them as we provide them a platform in which they can post the stories and publish them and share them with the public and the whole world and say that and tell their stories. Their stories could be about death, they could be about sorrow, they could be about depression, but at the same time they could be about success stories and daily life experiences that they like. They could be about some good aspects, and that's why we exist. We are members is not trying to show the sadness inside of Gaza, but it's also trying to show the good sides. And that's what I really like as I work with my social media team every day. We like to shed lights on the good parts. We like to shed parts on the talents, on the happy moments that we could live. For example, tomorrow we have Eid. So Eid to us as Muslims is a happy occasion, and we're trying to do our best to just, visit our relatives and receive some guests and eat candy and enjoy our time as families. And that's what I love, to be honest, that we finally, eventually we just decide to be happy. We put everything aside and decide to make each other happy. I think that's it for me. You can maybe ask me some questions, and if you want me to add something.
Yes, well, thank you very much. We certainly do have some questions for you. And your description of, the challenge of living under the blockade and the daily challenges of perhaps Israeli attacks that are happening on Gaza. I mean, we as activists that are trying in solidarity with you in Gaza, every time we read of these, it breaks our heart that we have not been able to push hard enough on our governments, and particularly those of us that live in the United States. And this Veterans for Peace convention that we have going on right now is primarily of American citizens, although we do have chapters in the UK, and Ireland, and Korea, and Japan, and Okinawa. And they're all very concerned about the issue of Israeli occupation and blockades. And your organization of We Are Not Numbers gives us hope because we see that you all who are living this very difficult life have not given up hope. And while it's not easy, as you've described, you are, the voices that propel and compel others around the world to keep speaking out against the Israeli and U.S. Policies toward Palestine. I know that you all have been doing a lot of work on journalism, and in fact, I read that you have had a big workshop for journalists. How many people were a part of that, and was it a valuable time that you spent with this workshop?
Well, lately we joined like 50 writers to our team of writers, and we expect them to be later working as journalists, or at least writers. We are giving them whatever we can to make them ready for this, and we're helping them better the writing skills, the journalism, and so we're organizing some sessions about writing, journalism, media, uh, how to make interviews, photography, and all of that, so they can be ready as citizen journalists and writers, so they can be the voice of the unheard and even the heard inside of Gaza. There's something that you said that I would like to comment on. You said something like, we are giving you hope that maybe Israeli occupation would one day end, right? But for me, I should say that yes, we're hopeful and yes, we're powerful, but at the same time, nowadays, I feel like everyone around me is just hopeless. And I'm one of them, by the way. Everyone is just hopeless nowadays because since we started to realize what life is, we have never felt it the right way. We are getting used to being, to living under the Israeli blockade. We're getting used to being killed whenever the Israeli occupation wants. We're being used to hearing bad news. We're used to being thought of as heroes when we're not. I really like the fact that people are trying to give us power and hope and strength and support us with whatever they can. But at the same time, we just need more than that. We need action. We need some people help us to push for getting our human rights. We need some things to change. We need the Israeli blockade to be left. We just can't go on and keep saying, yes, we're good, we're hopeful, we're strong. Well, sometimes no, we're not strong. Because nowadays, I think all of you have heard about the fact that the UN predicted the Gaza Strip to be unlivable in 2020. And to be honest, we, like ourselves, we are surprised that we're still alive because everything is just deteriorating. And I'm sad that um, we have to keep talking about all of that while we think that it's just common, it's known with that we're living this and that, but nothing is changing. And I really appreciate everything that the pro-Palestinian people are doing, but I think we just need more than that. We need action. And to me, I know that some things might change. I can't say I'm certain things will change because I'm that hopeless. But I hope like we can help each other and together we can get to something. So thank you all for trying your best, but we need you to also realize that we're not heroes. We're not supposed to be superheroes. We're just human beings and trying to be human beings. We're trying to um, face those who are dehumanizing us and also those who are trying to deal with us as heroes so they can people. I don't know, this is just bothering me. People think of us as heroes and they tell us, they think of us as, oh, they can live, they lived this and that so they can live what's more than that. No, maybe we've just lost our hope, lost our power. Maybe we should stand up and say that's enough. So I hope that the day in which we will be free is going to be soon. But at the same time, I still call for action.
Well, thank you. And you are exactly right. The call to action for us in the international community, because you are the ones that are under the siege, under the blockade. You're the ones that's suffering the power outages, the lack of electricity, the lack of refrigeration, the lack of lights so that you can study, the lack of transportation. And it is governments like ours in the United States that is causing that. So that's why we are part of organizations that are trying to push our governments to push the Israeli government to end the blockade, and we will continue to do that. Our Gaza Freedom Flotilla was to be sailing right now. It was actually to sail in May, but because of the COVID, we are not, but we will be doing that next year, assuming the COVID is lifted. Let me ask you, is there much knowledge within Gaza about these activists, international activists' attempts at drawing attention, for example,
Yes,
the
sure.
Flotilla and others?
Yes, sure. Especially as we're working to earn the numbers, we receive so much support from all of you, and we receive so many supportive messages and calls, and we've been invited for such interviews and webinars for so long, and each one of them makes us feel like we're heard and we're being supported by people who really care about us, and there are some people who really are interested in whatever we're facing, and that really gives us power to go on. And yes, even the civilians themselves, they know that there are some people who are on their side, and we really appreciate all of that. Maybe you don't see much responses from us just because not all of us speak English. So we're trying to, send the message from our civilians to you and tell you, yes, we are appreciating all of that, and we know all of that, and we value all of that. So, and I'm sure that for people who lived inside of Gaza or visited Gaza, I mean, I'm sure they could see this love and appreciation from the people as they see them in the streets. You cannot move in one street and not being, I don't know, like everyone around you will be like, hi, can I meet you? Where are you from? I'm glad you're here, and so on. Like, we really love our supporters. And like I said, maybe it's hard for you to get responses, but it's just because not all of us speak English. And that's where we see our responsibility, the youth of Gaza. We send these messages and we represent the people of Gaza this way. So thank you on behalf of everyone.
Oh, well, then you're so right. For those of us who have been to Gaza, it is so true. You're on the streets. Yeah. So many people come up to say hello, and would you join us for tea at our house, or come have dinner with us? The hospitality is just amazing. Thank you so very much for being with us and giving us a view of what it's like to be in Gaza right now. And we thank you for all the work that you do with We Are Not Numbers to give us both a written and visual and now a speaking view of what is happening. So we thank you very, very much. And we will continue our webinar later with our other panelists. So thank you very much, Asma.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And as I say, after the end of any interview or webinar, I'm really sorry for the amount of depression that I'm causing you with my sad thoughts. I'm just trying to show you it really feels like to be a Palestinian, but at the same time maybe I'm affecting it because of my depression. But I'm trying, yes, to show you the truth, and I hope that doesn't affect you.
Well, we understand why you would be depressed, and it's our job as international activists to get these conditions lifted off of you of Gaza, so you can have a normal life, so you won't have to look at all of the things that our governments are helping the Israelis do to you. So we understand what you're saying, and we're going to be continuing to do our best to stop those conditions that are causing that. And again, we thank you very, very much, Asma.
Thank you. I hope later you will be inviting me to other webinars in which I can tell you some good stories from Gaza and happy moments.
We are thrilled to be joined this afternoon with Olivia ZEMOR, who joins us from France. She's a former journalist who worked for Agence France Press and founded an international press agency. For the past 2 decades, she's been a political activist who is the co-founder and leader of the educational and activist group EuroPalestine, which conducts consciousness-raising activities which seek to enlighten the media, politicians, and the general public about the denial of rights and justice to Palestinian people. And she will be telling us some about these actions. She has been denied entry into Israel several times for actions critical of the policies of the State of Israel. I was with her in Egypt in 2013 when she organized an international women's delegation to go from Egypt to Gaza. Unfortunately, Egyptian authorities denied entry to over 50 women from all over the world as they arrived at the Cairo International Airport. I had already come in a day or two early, so I was already there. But when all of these women arrived and were denied entry, they had a sit down at the airport and a song fest at the immigration booths that lasted many hours until Egyptian authorities finally removed them onto
almost 2 days. Almost 2 days.
That's right, 2 days. And then the last time I saw Olivia was in The Hague in the Netherlands in December of 2019, when she organized a very, very important protest at the International Criminal Court in The Hague to put pressure on The Hague to take the cases of Palestinians, many cases that had built up at the International Criminal Court, none of which had been acted on. So we are thrilled to have Olivia ZEMOR with us today on our webinar for Palestine. Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Our association is a very mixed group of young, less young women, men from all kind of origins and religion or without religion. So it is very important because then accusation of anti-Semitism don't work on us because we are so mixed and we refuse. What the government, French government, tries to do is to put people in separate little boxes according to their religion or origin. So I think this is something we think is important from the start. That is when the association was created 20 years ago. And we've been active on the BDS campaign from the start, I will say, even before the Palestinian civil society launched this appeal. But it's true that the BDS was really strong and efficient from, unfortunately, from the 98-99 massacres in Gaza. This was when, in, let's say, March 2009, was when many people started boycotting in a very visible way in France products exported by Israel. I will not say Israeli products because many of them are not Israeli. They come from Palestinian lands, and so we say products exported by Israel. And in France, of course, the French lobby is very powerful, numerous, and especially aggressive. You have important Israeli lobby in the United States, in Canada, in many countries, but I think the French one is the most aggressive one for various reasons that would be maybe a bit too long to explain, but also because a part of this lobby is made of Jews coming from North Africa, Algeria, after the independence, and they have the feeling to have been expelled from those countries, and a revenge to take from Arabs, and also a sense of guilt because they did not make the choice to go and live in Israel. So they feel a bit guilty because it's more comfortable, of course, to live in France than in Israel. They don't have to serve for 3 years in the army. They don't have the permanent risk of tension that there is in Israel. They are quiet and happier in France. So they try to show their friends or family that chose to live in Israel that still they are very useful by aggressing activists all the time, and by being a very important lobby with many successes with the French government. So we are in a situation where the boycott of Israel, cultural boycott, Batsheva, for example, and sports boycott, commercial boycott, is quite popular in France, but yet it's not easy for people to get involved because there is a strong repression and a strong intimidation against the people who do that. First, the Israeli lobby succeeded in having the French government suing the BDS activists and distorting a law we have in France against racism and discrimination, and trying to present our political actions as anti-Semite, and so many people are scared, were scared at least, because we have a new situation with the victory with the European Court of Human Rights that condemned last June the French state for the condemnation of 12 BDS activists in the east of France. And they condemned the French government to pay them something like $120,000 of damages, and the consideration in the judgment are very, very interesting, because it's not the judges of the this court did not only say that it was against freedom of expression. They went much further. They said that the French state had negated the rights of political expression to those people, that the French state, because it is the Supreme Court that condemned them, had distorted a French law that was good to be able to condemn those activists, and also that they stated in their judgment that it is quite legitimate to call for a boycott of Israel for political reasons and in a non-violent way. And that it was even more than legitimate. They said that it served general public interest to open this debate and to do that. So, now we still have trials coming because they were started before this judgment, and I am really excited at the idea of what's going to happen. For example, I am sued by Teva, Teva, the Israeli generic drug industry, because in France we we think this boycotting Israeli drugs, while Palestinians cannot have drugs, cannot be cured, cannot get possibility to remain healthy, is something really very, very important. So we have this campaign that has been lasting for years and is beginning to be successful, because more and more people, about, I will say, 300,000 in France, have a sticker on their health insurance card saying no Teva.
Whoa.
Which means that when they go to the pharmacist, he sees at once that he has to give them another generic drug, Merck, Biopharma, anyone, but not Teva. And of course, Teva is not very happy about it. And the French Israeli lobby put pressure on Teva so that they sue us. And in the coming months, I mean, before the end of the year, I have a trial, and I am quite happy about it, because it will give the opportunity to more people in France to know that Teva is Israeli, which many people don't even know, and that they should not buy Teva. So we are not finished with trials, but I think that it will change So our association until now, for about where its trials have been starting about in 99, when the boycott action started, and for 10 years we have had trials, not only our association but all BDS activists in France from various associations. We were lucky to win our trials, but some other activists were condemned and had to pay fines. And of course, this is something quite, and it's also a condemnation. That means that if you are, you can't be a teacher, or you can't work in certain fields if you are condemned, if you have a condemnation. So many people were a bit scared. And also, there is also much threats, intimidation, attacks, physical attacks by the fascist thugs of the so-called Jewish Defense League, which is not banned in France, though in the United States it is classified in terrorist organizations. In France, the government let them do very violent things, like hurting, killing people, and of course hacking websites and things like that. So we had our bookstore in Paris called Resistance, rampaged twice by those thugs. We had, like many other activists, our homes tagged with hate tags, hate racist tags. And also I had to go to hospital, for example, once, because I was physically aggressed. So this is a real challenge, in France, to be in solidarity with Palestine. And we never gave up. We never gave up the open activity. Some activists, of course, gave up the most visible actions and try to keep on with conferences, movies, inside doors activities, but did not dare go out in the streets any longer. And we did, and we went on with the actions, with the demonstrations and gathering in the streets and street shows and many things like that. And also we went on wearing our green T-shirts that maybe you saw with Free Palestine on the front and Boycott Israel on the back. And it was also a fight always with the police, and we were arrested and kept in police station for days to try and prevent us from wearing them. So, as you may understand, there is no law in France, no real law against boycotting or calling for the boycott of any country. And it's difficult to authorize the boycott of China, the boycott of Iran, the boycott of Russia, and to forbid the boycott of Israel. So the government, despite all the pressure of the Israeli lobby, has not accepted to have a law forbidding the boycott. But they try in different ways to intimidate and prevent people and silence people. So I think that now it's getting more and more difficult. They could not even pass a law equating anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism in the parliament. They just had, let's say, a resolution or something, but it's not a law and doesn't, it's worth nothing, you know. And the Israeli lobby is not very happy right now because we have more and more people understanding that it's not illegal to boycott Israel, so more confident. And also, we had another important victory in France. It is that in November 2016, we forced, in a way, the government, the French government, to have a new legislation following European recommendations. And since that time, the tradespeople are forbidden to label products coming from Palestinian territories, occupied Palestinian territories, from settlements. They cannot label them Israel. So they are obliged to put the origin. In France, you have to put the origin of each fresh product in with a size as big as the price of the product. This is, if you don't do that, it's illegal. So what do they put? They cannot put Israeli settlements, and they don't know where the products come because the French government is very hypocritical. They don't have any control on the at the borders when the products are exported by Israel. So how could the grocer or even the supermarket know where it comes from precisely? But we have them remove all those products because maybe they come from the settlements, and so it's illegal. And it's, I don't remember the word in English, when you sell something that has been stolen, then you, I don't remember, but you see what I mean. So it's illegal, and we go, even a few people, sometimes by massive groups, but sometimes just one person and another one filming, and we have the clients, the customers help us and convince the trader that he must remove the products.
Thank you very much, Olivia. This is very, very interesting to all of us. The things that you all have been able to do and forcing legislation, going after the pharmaceuticals, where you've been able to actually get a notice on your health cards that for people that choose not to have the Teva products, that is there. These are all very, very interesting things, I think, for us in the U.S. and types of actions that we can add to our list of things that we're doing.
And of course, we also, like the boycott against South Africa during apartheid, we also call for the boycott of the companies, French or multinationals, that participate in the colonialism and repression of Palestinians, such as HP, Hewlett-Packard, which produces, makes specific facial recognition software for Israeli checkpoints, and also which equips the Navy, Israeli Navy, which fights the people from Gaza, you know, who go for fish, the fishermen. They equip them with computer system. All the Israeli Navy is equipped with HP computer system. And we also boycott and call for the boycott of Puma, because they are the sponsor. They chose to be the sponsor of the national Israeli team, football team. And so the Israeli football team is not any team. It represents the state of Israel, the apartheid state, and they have many of their, of course, all their football players are in the army, and they are still in the army as reservists. I don't know how you call them. And yes, and they, many of them have their club based in the settlements. So this is newer for people.
Well, we thank you for bringing up the issue of Hewlett-Packard, because as the United States has such a close military relationship with Israel, and that the U.S. asked Israel to test certain types of equipment on Palestinians.
Exactly.
So it is certainly important that we in the U.S. continue our boycott of Hewlett-Packard and put pressure, because we're seeing exactly what the Israelis are using on Palestinians is coming right back to the U.S., and we're seeing a lot of that being used here in the United States on U.S. citizens. But the primary point we want for Palestine is that Palestinians should not have to be subjected to this. And we thank you so very much for being with us today to give us an insight into the very, very important things that you all are doing in France, and the issue of court cases, and helping activists get through all of these trials, or something that each of our countries are facing, as good, brave, solid activists are taking it upon themselves to challenge the Israeli government policies on Palestine, as well as our own national policies, whether it be in France or in the United States. So,
and I think that international coordination between BDS activists is so important, and I am very happy to have links with Code Pink, for example, with the been the BDS in the UK, and we are going to the trial of German comrades on Monday because they are sued for having interrupted a conference made by a criminal, a war criminal Israeli in a university, Humboldt University in Berlin. So we're going to Berlin. I mean, we are a French delegation going to Berlin to support them, as when we had trials in France, many comrades from abroad came to support us. And I think this is very, very important, because the Zionists are very well coordinated among various countries, and I think we have to do the same, but for the good reasons.
Indeed, you're so right. And please wish our friends in Germany the very best. That's a very difficult country to really challenge Israeli policies. So they are very strong people to be doing that. And again, we thank you very, very much for being with us, and we look forward to our cooperation on challenging Israeli policies toward Palestine.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Well, and welcome everyone. We're now live after our two pre-recorded presentations, and we have with us MIKO PELED. And MIKO, if you would unmute yourself and put on the camera so we can see you. We are thrilled to have MIKO with us today. MIKO is a member of Veterans for Peace. He is a former member of the Israeli military, and his father was a general in the Israeli military. His military experience and the family tragedy propelled him into solidarity with Palestine. He's asked to speak around the world about his unique background and his support for Palestinians. He travels regularly to Palestine, where he speaks and works with the Popular Resistance and the BDS movement and other justice groups. He's the author of The General Son, A Journey of an Israeli in Palestine, and also Injustice, the story of the Holy Land Foundation 5. MIKO was on our Veterans for Peace trip to Palestine. I believe it was in 2016, not just on it. I mean, he was the key part of it. So MIKO, we are thrilled that you are with us, and we would love to hear from you about what's going on in Israel pertaining to Palestine and all of the other activities that you are involved with. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Anne. It's a real pleasure to be part of this conference. I love you guys. Veterans for Peace, I think, are, hold the standard very, very high for all activists. The engagement, the involvement, the caring, the hard work, the incredible spirit and attitude of Veterans for Peace on all issues is an inspiration to me, and I think is an inspiration to activists everywhere. So thanks for inviting me, and thanks for all the fantastic work that you do. You personally, Anne, and everybody in Veterans for Peace, all of my great friends. The trip to Palestine was wonderful. I was very lucky to be part of this wonderful group. And spend whatever it was, 10 days, 2 weeks in Palestine together, meeting with people, instigating like it's nobody's business. I mean, both the Palestinians and the Israeli soldiers were, I think, shocked to see this group of seemingly peaceful people, peaceful-looking people, suddenly pull out the banners, pull out the flags, and march and create havoc everywhere. Really, the term, take no prisoners was appropriate. So it was wonderful. And again, my admiration for Veterans for Peace knows no boundaries. I don't think there's been a more important time. There's ever been a more important time to be an activist involved in the struggle for liberation in Palestine. And we see, if we only take the last few months, what we've seen, annexation plans, Donald Trump's, basically giving Israel, the Israeli government, everything they could possibly want, allowing Israel to continue its expansion and its and its oppression of Palestinians and the stealing of Palestinian land, and not even pretending that there's anything wrong with it. Previous administrations pretended at least that they didn't like it. They gave the money, they gave the weapons, but at least they frowned when Israel went ahead with building Jewish-only colonies all over Palestine, when home demolitions were taking place. At least there was a sense of discomfort. Here, there's no sense of discomfort. Here is just, let's go get them, and we're all on the same side. And we've got this American ambassador in Tel Aviv, David Friedman, who of course now sits in Jerusalem because they moved the embassy. We've got Donald Trump and his son-in-law, who are totally behind Israel in a way that's unprecedented, even for American support. And sadly, the only contender running against Trump is a man who has been known to say that he is a Zionist, and if there was no Israel, America would have to invent it. So it's not like we're looking at good prospects. I mean, I never believed that change was going to come from the top anyway. So it's never been more important to be active on this issue. The lives of Palestinians, be they in the West Bank, be they in the Gaza Strip, be they in the Nakab region, which is of course the entire southern half of the country, be they in Jerusalem or the Galilee or Jaffa or any other place where Palestinians reside, is it always reaches a place where we think it can't get any worse, and then it gets worse. You know, a report just came out in June that states that in over 3 years of 2017, 2018, and 2019, in the Nakab region alone, which again is the southern part, the entire southern part of Palestine, each year, the state of Israel demolished over 2,000 homes, Palestinian homes. Each year, over 2,000 homes each year in that region alone. Now, within the Nakab Desert, in the Nakab region, there are about 250,000 Palestinian citizens of Israel, Palestinian Bedouin. They have already been kicked out of their lands. They're already being pushed into townships. Their villages, whatever is left of them, is being destroyed. They do not have access to water. They do not have access to electricity. They do not have access to roads and healthcare. Half of them live in towns that the state doesn't even recognize, so they don't even get schools. I mean, the conditions are beyond horrifying. And these are Palestinians who hold this dubious ID card, which grants them Israeli citizenship. In other words, these are Israeli citizens. We're not even talking about the Palestinians who are in the Gaza Strip. You know, home demolitions in Jerusalem. There's just a picture out there over the last few days on social media. A Palestinian who was forced to demolish his own home because they charge the Palestinians a fee to demolish their home. So quite often they will opt to do it themselves. Plus, if they do it themselves, they get a chance to take everything out of the home. So not everything inside the home is destroyed. Otherwise, the army comes at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and just gives them a 5-minute notice. This way they have time, they can salvage maybe some of the material and so forth. I believe in Jerusalem alone, there are over 16,000 home demolition orders. I mean, can you imagine 16,000 is the size of a small town? And these are just the demolition orders that exist today. Palestinians in the northern part of the country as well, issues of lack of water, COVID-19 spreading like wildfire in all the Palestinian communities. And I'm talking about the communities who have Israeli citizenship. Because they are the poorest communities, because they have no access to the kind of resources that the Israeli Jewish communities have, because the information gets to them last, because they live in very overcrowded, the conditions are overcrowded conditions, so social distancing and so forth is almost impossible, because they live in conditions where water supply is inconsistent at best, so washing your hands as much as you need to is not possible. And again, I'm only talking about the Palestinians who are actually citizens of the state of Israel. And then, of course, in the West Bank, we know what's been going on for years. In the Gaza Strip, of course, it's an open-air prison. Israel bombed the Gaza Strip just a few days ago again. It's a reality that is described, you know, it's almost like looking at a loved one who is terminally ill, and the sense is all we can do for them is maybe, you know, make them a little more comfortable, give them a cup of tea or something, you know, because the brutality and the speed with which the state of Israel is moving forward with the destruction of Palestine, the destruction of the people, the destruction of the monuments, the destruction of historical cities and towns and villages as we speak today. I mean, every single day, and you've seen it and I've seen it, is incredible. The speed and the brutality are unimaginable. And they do it in broad daylight. They're not even embarrassed. They're not even shy. I'll give a shout out to my friend Susan Abulhawa, who just published a wonderful book, Against the Loveless World. And I just read it. I'm writing a little review for her. And she describes this horrible pain when you watch the settlements grow, when you see the prisoners come out of the prisons after years of torture, when you see the mothers who lost their children, you know, shot and killed by, you know, randomly by Israeli soldiers. I mean, it's horrifying. So I think rather than take the road of despair and raising our hands and giving up and saying, no, we're not up to the task, again, I look at Veterans for Peace as an inspiration, a group of people who have never raised their hands, have never held a white flag, are always out there fighting and fighting and fighting in situations where it seems are against all odds, and never giving up. And that's precisely the attitude that we need when we talk about Palestine. We need to redouble our efforts. We need to find the inspiration. We need to find the hope, and then fight and demand. You know, we have whatever tools we have in our hands, and that's what we got to work with. We've got great people in Palestine. We got people who have not given up. I talk to people in Gaza all the time. I just did a panel with a couple of activists and journalists in Gaza. They're not giving up. They're fighting the fight. They believe in a better future. They believe in the possibility of a real free Palestine, from the river to the sea, from the Lebanese border to the Gulf of Aqaba, an entire country which is free and democratic, with one person, one vote, that respects everybody's rights, respects the rights of minorities, respects the different religions and ethnic groups that exist within that country, within Palestine. That is a vision, like I say, even people in Gaza who are living under conditions that most people here can't even imagine. Even they hold the hope, and they work and they struggle in order to see that vision materialize. And so again, like I said in the beginning, I don't think there's ever been a more important time to double our efforts in Palestine and demand that they support BDS, that they accept BDS, that all this nonsense about BDS and equating opposition to Zionism with Judaism, and that we need to every single day. Hi, on, can you hear me? I don't know if I lost. I'm sorry. Can you?
We hear you now.
Can you hear me? Okay.
We were getting it was in and out, but it's sounding better now.
Frozen. So I don't know if I'm or not.
You're a little frozen, but you're thawing out, I think. It may be frozen at the moment. Do you want to reboot it and?
Okay. Can you see me and hear me now?
Yeah. Now it's fine.
Okay. All right. Let's leave it then. Anyway, so as I was saying, the vision of a free Palestine is something that is being held by the people who are suffering the most in Palestine, and they're fighting and struggling for it. Like I said, the ridiculous argument that somehow to call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions is anti-Semitic is complete, is an utter nonsense. The demand to end the military occupation, the demand for equal rights, the demand to allow the refugees to return, these are completely reasonable demands. There's nothing anti-Semitic or anti-anything about them, quite the opposite. These demands are exactly the opposition to racism and to anti-Semitism. Opposing Zionism and calling Zionism what it is, which is a racist ideology, which did produce the state of Israel, which is an apartheid regime. It has always been an apartheid regime. I think it's important for us to have these conversations. I think it's important for us to push this agenda forward. And as elections are nearing, we need to be sure that this becomes front and center. The elected politicians know that we demand boycott and sanctions against the state of Israel, at the very least, to condition aid with Israel compliance with international law. You know, at the very, very least, which is what Bernie Sanders and some of the more progressive people in the Democratic Party are calling for. So I think we do have tools, and we do have spirit, and we do have great people both around the world. I just heard Olivia speak, and like I said, Veterans for Peace and activists in Palestine, and the group in Berlin, which is being, is going on trial soon. You know, there's great people everywhere working. We just need to work harder. We need to expand circle, and we need to see and feel and taste and hear the what it looks like when Palestine is free and democratic.
Indeed.
So I think, yeah, I think that's probably enough for me to say. I don't know if there's going to be a Q&A or what comes next, but
Okay.
I'm happy with this.
Great, wonderful. Well, why don't we, Asma is online too. She was, I don't know if you were with us in the very beginning. She was our first person, and she is in Gaza, and she is joining us. So Asma, can you turn on your camera and microphone? And I'll just mention while she's doing that, you know, that the whole issue of how we challenge the Israeli policies through BDS, that sometimes there are some problems with that, and because the Zionists go after us, and as the support for Palestinian rights have grown, so too have the attempts by groups that uncritically support the Israeli state and policies to silence advocates for change. And through a variety of tactics, these groups pressure government actors, universities, and other private institutions to investigate, censor, and punish individuals and groups who criticize Israel or support Palestinian rights. So if anyone ever finds himself in the predicament that they are getting sued by one of these Zionist groups, we just want to remind people that there are legal resources out there. Palestine Legal is an organization that solely focuses on people that are challenging Israeli policies. But of course, the Center for Constitutional Rights has taken the case of Palestinians to the International Criminal Court, where it's still evolving. The National Lawyers Guild has been very helpful, and the ACLU has challenged in federal court many of the state legislation which has outlawed boycott, divestment, and sanction, and has put into state contracts that it's that a person that gets a contract or signs a contract, even a teacher, that if they refuse to sign saying they do not go along with BDS, then they don't get the contract. So there are resources out there because the Zionist groups are really going after us big time.
And Anne, you know, I would add to that, if I may.
Yes.
You know, Israel has just is sending in a new ambassador to Washington, which is Gilad Erdan, and he was the chief architect of the fight against BDS. He was the Minister for Strategic Affairs, and he personally considers the fall of Jeremy Corbyn and the destruction really of the Labour Party in the UK to his credit for the work that he did in the UK, which is abhorrent, but of course he was successful. You know, Jeremy Corbyn lost, and the Labour Party, all the Palestine solidarity within it has fizzled away. So he is now going to be the ambassador in Washington, D.C. So I think we can expect an even stronger and more fierce opposition to our work, which means we need to really roll up our sleeves and prepare for a much tougher fight.
Indeed, we do. And we've had a couple of comments that have come in on the chat and the Q&As on the issue of academic boycott of institutions in Israel, and trying to get organizations not to send people over to Israel. I don't know if you have some comments on that.
Sure. I think, many people who support boycott in general seem to have an issue with the academic and cultural boycott. And my reply to that is, look, we know that there are 2 million people locked up in a prison in the Gaza Strip, 30 minutes drive away from Tel Aviv. They are denied water. They are bombed on a regular basis. They are unable to build, they're unable to travel, they're denied medical care even after they're bombed. A child in the Gaza Strip with a curable cancer will die. a child living a mile away on the other side of the border with the same cancer will live, because Israel controls who has access to that kind of care. So where are all those academics who are supposed to be liberal or supposed to be progressive? Why are they not on the streets? You know, Tel Aviv University sits, I think, on 4 or 5 different destroyed Palestinian villages. Why do they not demand that reparations are paid to the people who used to live there, whose land this belongs to? Where are these academics? And the same thing goes the Beersheba University in the south. What do you people think that sits on? And Haifa and so forth. All the big institutions, not to mention the ones built in the West Bank. So these academics and plus these academic institutions work very, very closely with the Israeli military, with the Israeli secret police, the Shabak, with the Mossad, developing weapons, developing psychology for torture. I mean, what else do they need to do in order to qualify for boycott and divestment and sanctions? You know what I mean? This myth that somehow the academics are liberal and progressive, it doesn't hold water in it when it comes to Israeli academics. They are not there. Otherwise, there'd be thousands in the streets demanding justice, at least water and medical care for the people in Gaza, at least that. You know what I mean? So I think it's imperative that the academic and cultural boycott be strengthened and supported, and we demand that be part of the campaign.
Thank you. And I know that you've been working on the issue of textbooks in the United States and how the Zionist groups have been trying to write Palestine out of the history of U.S. textbooks.
That's right. It's incredible how much they've created their own organizations, their own NGOs, so to speak, here in the United States, whose entire mission is to make sure that the social studies textbooks in American public schools teach in a slant that favors Israel. And they show up at the social studies conferences with their programs and their curriculum and all these courses that they even offer continuing education units to teachers. They pay them to come and participate in these courses, which never happens. Teachers never get paid for these. And they provide them with a curriculum, and their slant is always pro-Israeli. And it's shocking. We've had 2 panels on it already. We have another one coming up next week. And whether it's issues like a teacher being fired for having a Free Palestine sticker on his table, or these organizations working state by state to make sure that the textbooks reflect what they want them to reflect when it comes to Islam, when it comes to Arabs, and when it comes particularly to the issue of Israel and Palestine. And I'll give a shout out to the Virginia Coalition for Human Rights, who have challenged them in Virginia and succeeded. And the Texas Coalition for Human Rights as well, who challenged them in Texas and have had some successes. You know, the panels, if anybody wants to listen to them, if you go to MIKOPELED.com, we have it all. We have the panels there. You can hear as much as you want and so forth. But yes, that's a big part of why they're so successful.
Well, thank you for highlighting that. I had not been aware of all that until your webinars on it. So thank you. What I want to do now, we have a video, a 6-minute video that's just come in from Mazen Kumsaya, who's one of our great human rights activists, and Zohar Regev Chamberlain, who's with us with the Gaza Freedom Flotilla. They just sent it in just about 20 minutes ago. And we want to have that short one, and then MIKO, if you and Asma can be there for the last 2 minutes that we have, just so I can thank you then. So Samantha, if you could go ahead and run the video.
Hi everybody, this is Mazen Kumsaya from Beit Sahur in Palestine. Next to me is
Zohar Regev, originally from Israel.
And we are here working away at the museum and the Institute for Biodiversity and Sustainability, and I congratulate you on hosting events and asking us, and thank you for asking us to speak. Basically, in terms of what's going on here in Palestine, We're getting about 300 or so Palestinian cases of COVID-19 every day, and about 1,000 Israeli cases every day. So the situation is like elsewhere. Today is also sad news from Lebanon, with a huge explosion that killed over 100 people, including a friend of mine, a member of the Rotary Club in Lebanon that I knew and I met in Lebanon, and thousands were injured. So we keep up with the news around us, the situation around us. As you know, also a situation with the Israeli occupation and colonization of our land has been ongoing and has not stopped. And even in the past 24 hours, 2 people had to demolish their own homes because Israel says they have to, or if they will demolish them, then they will charge them even thousands more shekels so that they can claim the cost of demolition. So anyways, the situation is pretty bad locally in terms of what's going on. The politics still the same. Netanyahu is in power and he seems to be getting away with his corruption. There's lots of demonstrations in Israel that are happening, and Zohar, maybe you can talk about what's going on in the demonstrations and all that.
Well, from what I hear, there are demonstrations all over Israel, but specifically they focus on the residence of the Prime Minister in Jerusalem, in Balfour Street. And it's interesting to see that people who don't usually demonstrate in Israel go out because they suddenly feel that this repression that has been ongoing for the Palestinians is finally catching up with them. Finally, they see that all this mechanism of control, the police, the military, can be turned against them as well. I don't know how many of them are waking up to this reality. I don't know how many of them connect the dots. But there are demonstrations. They're not happy with their prime minister because of corruption. And maybe they will eventually also try to do something about the underlying issues.
Yeah, and then the other thing with the COVID-19 adding to the economic misery of people, on both sides of the green line, I would say, there are a lot of Palestinians inside Israel who are now basically falling below the poverty line. As you know, also our economy in the West Bank is dependent on tourism, which hasn't been happening actually since late February, early March. So the economy is pretty much shut down. The situation globally is pretty bad, and we expect it will continue like this for months to come. The politics of the situation here in Palestine is still the same. Unfortunately, our leadership is not really being proactive or even thinking about being proactive. They're just reactive to whatever happens or whatever is dumped on them. And we have people who are speaking out, who are demonstrating, who are trying to do some things here. But it is a small number of people. People are very frustrated, and we really need to get the dynamics of the situation changed dramatically, in my humble opinion, over the next few months if we are going to make a dent in our future as people.
Yeah, I think you were asking also about the annexation, and I think we can say that annexation has been ongoing for, 100 years, if you want to say, but definitely ever since Israel occupied these territories by force. And the only difference is this announcement that seemed to have raised some sort of outrage around the world is just, a way to divert attention from the situation on the ground. De facto, it's already annexed. Israel controls every movement of the Palestinian people.
Okay, well, thank you very much and good luck on your rest of your conference. Thanks for having us. Take care.
Thank you.
Well, that was Mazen and Zohar coming from Palestine. MIKO, if you could turn on your camera, and Asma, if you would like to join us, turn on your camera so we can say hello to you. I want to thank everyone from Asma to Olivia, who actually emailed just a little while ago and said that the trial in Berlin, the 3 people that were on trial for disrupting a Zionist presentation were found not guilty. So that's good. And MIKO for joining us today, for Maza, Zohar, and then Samantha and Colleen and the entire Veterans for Peace team that has been putting together an enormous number of workshops to have this online national convention. So we really appreciate them. And MIKO, how about some final words? And Asma, if you would like to say something, we'd love to have you. Please go ahead, MIKO.
Sure. Well, thank you, Anne, and thanks Veterans for Peace for actually going ahead and putting together the conference this year. I think it's incredibly important. You guys are an inspiration to so many of us. So thanks for doing this, even under these difficult conditions. I think the news from Berlin is very encouraging. It's showing us that even in Germany, which is probably the most Zionist countries in Europe, we can see victories, and people realize that BDS is not a threat, and that disrupting Zionist speakers who come to spew their propaganda, their racist propaganda, we should go on. And I think, if anything, that should be an inspiration for us to do more and more precisely that sort of thing, because it's obviously working, and like I said, it's a great victory for all of us. So that's it. And, thank you to all of our friends in Palestine who are such an inspiration and do such great work. And let's keep up the fight until Palestine is free.
Indeed. And Asma, we wish you all the very best in Gaza under the very difficult situations that you have there. And of course, for Mazen and Zohar that are in the West Bank, our hearts go out to you, but we need to do more than hearts going out. We need action here in the U.S. to put pressure on the administration, no matter which one comes in, and on that Congress. So that's it from Veterans for Peace and our Palestine workshop. So again, Samantha and Colleen, thank you all for getting this underway, and free Palestine.
Palestine.
Hey,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.